Hi, everybody. Welcome, welcome. My name is Meredith Gershenson. It is so good to be back. This is our first webinar of the new year. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about 5 ways to offer mental health support for your hourly staff. Today, I am joined with Michael Towers. Michael, thank you so much for coming on.
You're welcome. So glad to be here.
Awesome. So Michael is the CEO of Speaking of Your Success and a SHRM certified speaker. So Michael is a subject matter expert in the areas of leadership, mental health, and addiction. And really his mission is to utilize his knowledge to improve the lives of people that suffer. For over 2 decades, Michael has given talks to psychiatric hospitals, rehab, jails, and youth detention centers about how to live with mental illness. To give everyone a quick rundown of our Big Marker webinar platform here, we have the chat box to the right. I would love it if you dropped in those questions throughout the webinar. And at the very end, we'll have a Q&A with Michael. So be sure to drop in those questions there. To get everyone acquainted, I would love to hear where you are dialing in from. Personally, I am from the beautiful Chicago, where it is currently raining and not that surprising. So I'd love to hear where you're coming in from. We also have a couple poll questions throughout the webinar itself. So those will just slide up right on the bottom left of your screen. It's a really great way for us to interact with you all, see where everyone's heads are at. This is awesome also to see where everyone's coming in from. I see a lot of Midwesterners, same as myself. Awesome. Colorado, this is great. This is so cool. I'm so happy to have everyone back. And then finally, at the end of the webinar, we are offering an audit. So for those that fill it out, there is a chance that you can win an $100 Amazon gift card, which always comes in handy. And finally, to wrap things up, we are SHRM and HRCI certified. So if you're trying to get recertified in either of those, we are offering a single credit, and I will be sure to share the credit ID numbers at the very end. And finally, to give a little background on workforce.com, we are a workforce management software company that specializes in scheduling and time and attendance. And really, our overarching goal at the end of the day is to help business leaders and frontline managers just make the best decisions for their company. Cool. This is really great. Thank you guys so much for coming on. So, Michael, to kick things off, I would love for you to tell me about some of the work that you do at Speaking of Your Success.
Yeah, sure. First, I do want to honor Workforce and you for putting this on.
Yeah.
LinkedIn is where I spend most of my time, and it's full of people that just come out, and we call them pitch slappers. They just go for the business and do very little homework. And I honor you for providing value, especially around the areas of mental health for your target audience. So round of applause virtually. At Speaking of Your Success, first and foremost, we use the words or the phrase CEO, the term CEO and expert. We use those words loosely. I am a company of 2. And I can't afford to pay my wife right now. So CEO is loose. I do feel like I lead well, though. An expert, look, I've battled mental illness my whole life. So I have this lived experience. And I've been a mental health counselor for 20 years. So I've used that lived experience. I've turned the tables. I've experienced success. And my desire, my mission is to help people with mental illness. My message is that no matter your hurts, your mistakes, or your diagnosis, you can accomplish anything and live a life beyond your wildest dreams. Speaking of your success, we offer mental health programs that transform company culture. My wife, we are constantly researching and developing policies, procedures, and practices that organizations can implement to ensure that a workplace is psychologically safe for all employees. We offer consultation services and will walk alongside companies as they make the transition to a workplace that is conducive to the well-being of their human capital.
Yeah.
That may mean leadership training, resiliency training, mental health first aid, or guidance on how to provide the best benefit package to care for employees' mental health.
That's awesome. So tell me about the mental health method. This is something that I actually was drawn to when I was first seeing some of the work that you've done. I would love to hear about this methodology that you have helped implement into many businesses.
Yeah, when I was in speaker school, I took an online platform. SHRM had accepted me into one of their speakers bureau in 2020, and it was a chance encounter with an HR pro that had put me on a path for all my dreams to come true, to use my story to help anyone that wanted to rewrite theirs. And workplace mental health ended up being my niche. And so I started to do all the research that I could. And extreme mental health makeover, I designed and modeled after Extreme Home Makeover Edition. And what I thought about was taking a wrecking ball and smashing through the walls of any toxic workplace, or using dynamite to blow up an organization that hurts the people that work there. I envisioned starting from scratch, from the foundation, and building a utopian-like organization that appreciates their employees, demonstrates servant leadership, and empathy, and where no one experiences burnout. And as a mental health clinician, what I do with clients is I utilize screening instruments and diagnostic tools to get to the root of a problem, develop a treatment plan to address that stated problem, and guide my clients through the stages of recovery, and then prepare them for a maintenance phase. So essentially, I repair their wings and empower them to fly. And that's the gist of how I would approach a toxic workplace.
I love it. To jump right into it, what degree has mental health focused conversations increased over the past 2 years or so since COVID?
So when I got to the Bureau, I would say that I remember I sat down with the director, and she had said to that point, no one has ever asked for a mental health speaker. And I remember being very grateful to have that conversation. And I thought, that's the problem. It's like the wrong speakers talking to the wrong leaders.
Yep.
And I'm glad to say that that's changed. In 3 years later, right, we've gone through the Great Resignation, the Great Regret, and the Great Reshuffle. And statistically, not much has changed. Our professionals care, and you all are fighting aggressively. But in 2022, I had 5 eager prospects approach me for mental health programs, but they never materialized. And I suspect that they couldn't find the time to plan because they were either overwhelmed or burned out.
Sure.
Or leadership didn't make it a priority. But I'm happy to report that I'm ready to launch an initiative to have as many organizations as I can sign a commitment to improve mental health conditions in their workplace, and I'm going to bring the fight to them.
I love it. I just sent out the first poll question, and I would love to recap it a little bit. I asked, in what ways has mental health come up in the workplace? And over 50% are actually saying from employees, from frontline workers. Michael, is this something that you've seen? Have you seen it also within even managers, upper management, that sort of thing? Or has it mostly been condensed to those frontline employees who are really, working hard?
Yeah, I mean, I think working in addiction for 20 years, it's like the first step is to admit that you have a problem. And I think that's sometimes a problem for leaders, to admit that they have a problem.
Interesting.
Right. And so you have HR, that's the heartbeat of their organization. And honestly, I want to scroll back to my notes. I think it would be important to just address, right? The majority of your audience right now is HR reps, right? And I think that, HR professionals, we spend 90,000 hours at work, and I believe I can make the biggest impact in the workplace. And HR professionals are exceptional people. And I think there is a true desire to help people because of who HR pros are. And I don't think HR professionals choose HR. I don't think that they are in high school going, you know what I want to do with my life? I want to be an HR professional. I think that somewhere on the way to being superheroes or angels, HR grabs them. And if they did want to be an HR professional in high school, I assume they were also probably a resident assistant in college too.
Yeah.
They're the fun police. So probably, fun killers in college as well. But the fact of the matter is, HR pros are overlooked, undervalued, but they care the most. And sadly, they're disliked the most. So, for HR pros, no matter how it came to be that you started working in this field, I promise that you were born for it. You might not wear capes, but you have the power to save someone's life. And in your workplace, there are people all around you that are hurting, and you have the power to help them. So not upper management, right? Employees are going to be the ones that are burnt out. And if they do speak up, which that's another thing that we'll get into, is how many people are actually seeking out for help. It's HR, because again, there's this innate need to help people. They absorb that pain, and they're the ones that are reaching out, trying to help their people out of a feeling of need.
I think it's so interesting when you say how, you know, leaders or upper managers or even just managers of those frontline staff are typically the last to speak out. You know, they feel the need to take the brunt of it. And especially those who are in HR are also struggling. You know, everyone's in it together. And, you know, we were talking a little bit earlier, Michael, how this could be an 8-hour webinar, right? We can do so much content on just the topic of supporting mental health. So I completely agree. And I think it's so interesting. So going to mental health post-COVID, would mental health be this big of a topic if COVID weren't to occur, you know, or would we have gotten to this level of burnout regardless? You know, was it a matter of time?
In a word, no. Employees have been burning out forever. In the early 1900s, working conditions were dangerous and people were getting severely injured at work. The formation of unions came in to represent the worker, but only account for 25% of the workforce today. The lockdown freed a lot of people from toxic workplaces, right? They were sent home. And when people were called back to work, they couldn't stomach the idea of going back to a workplace that made them ill. So for those that did return, they pushed back against the status quo. 40 million people quit their job in 2021. Employees have had enough and they have a choice.
I love that. So what workplace factors, if any, contribute to poor mental health or burnout if you had to pinpoint it?
Working too many hours, deadlines, quotas, and pressure. The frustration of having to go back into work when a remote work was more than sufficient. Lack of professional and personal development. And the big one, lack of appreciation.
Interesting. I would love to point to this slide. We have some really interesting statistics here. And a question for the audience, you know, do these numbers line up? Do these correlate with what you guys are seeing within your own workplace? You know, I think the 62% of employees who miss workdays due to mental health, I find that staggering almost. And the fact that we're well above that 50% is quite shocking. So I'm curious for you guys, if you want to chime in the chat box, you know, has this something that you guys have been seeing within your own companies? I would love to hear from you all. And Michael, I'd love to hear on these numbers as well. Have these numbers been represented with companies that you have worked with?
Yeah, I would say that those numbers are under. Like when I saw them, I think that right around the midline is I'm sure they're accurate. Of course, Mark Twain said there are lies, damn lies, and statistics. But you know, the numbers that I look for, and because you know, a motivational speaker looking to be a professional speaker and subject matter expert, I look at numbers like 9 out of 10 workers say that workplace stress negatively affects their mental health. 90%. That 4 out of 5 employees say that their workplace isn't supportive or safe for their mental health conditions. I mean, that's 90%, you know, both those numbers. I mean, that's profound.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, to say the least. What are some of the top practices in this post-COVID world that we're currently in that have worked well for hourly workparse?
Yeah, you know, hourly workforce, gosh, do I feel for y'all. I have worked in production for 30 years. So I've been a counselor for 20 years, but parallel to that, I've been a gig worker doing concerts, theater, and all of that's been hourly, 1099, and it's got its challenges and benefits, and keeping benefits are one of them. And because of my mental health issues, it took me sentenced to 30. Well, I was looking at 33 years in jail, and I had a merciful judge sentence me to psychiatry. But at that point, I understood what I needed to do, and keeping benefits was a priority, right? So I did what it took. But to be an hourly worker and to try to pay for benefits and have an employer work you 40 hours so you can have benefits and not keep you at 30 hours so they don't have to pay. Like, that's a whole nother conversation.
Oh.
But, you know, say what you want about California, but their labor laws are worker friendly. So a 15-minute break every 4 hours and a reasonable lunch break should be non-negotiable. Leaders and managers should demonstrate authentic, individualized appreciation in the language of appreciation that employee feels appreciated by. And there'll be more on that later. But listen, you know, a retail employee, a waiter, the hospitality industry, a lot of turnover, maybe temp agencies. I don't care that you might only see this employee for one day. You're going to treat them like they're a salaried employee that you're going to know for 10 years. And I might be preaching to the choir for everybody that's an hourly employee, but I'm talking to leaders. And then managers need to destigmatize mental health in the workplace by strategically using their own mental health story to encourage employees to open up. And lastly, and more on this later, teach everyone mental health first aid.
That's super powerful, I would have to say. So how can HR better keep track of mental health concerns amongst their staff? You know, how do they know when to step in? What are some metrics that they're looking at?
Yeah, you know, obviously the bigger the organization, the tougher to track. But ideally track call outs, personal and sick days, and how many times someone is late to work. Surely you're looking for patterns, right? If Meredith is someone that's usually on time, that never takes a day off, all of a sudden shows a pattern of needing a lot of time off or coming late all of a sudden, you consider that a red flag or a warning sign. Notice of mood swings and abrupt changes in how your employees present themselves. You know, if someone's overly emotional or you know, you can tell when somebody's dealing with something.
Sure.
Right. Mental health first aid's about you know, inquiring about what's going on. And you know, we're so used to this idea that we're supposed to leave our problems at home. Well, you know what? I have to be a corporate speaker here and just say BS, but I'd like to use more colorful language. We have to blow that paradigm up.
Yeah.
So you also want to notice about, like, if an employee normally comes to work well put together, but all of a sudden they start showing up disheveled with poor personal hygiene, these are all warning signs. And as far as stepping in, anyone can have a bad day, but you're looking for a pattern of 2 weeks or more. But if you smell alcohol, suspect the person is under the influence of drugs, or are concerned that employees at a risk for self-harm, you need to act immediately.
I'm seeing a lot of responses to the latest poll question I sent out, and I'd love to hear from you all. This is really great information. I asked, have you ever had to intervene with a staff member that you suspect was struggling with mental health problems? If so, how did you approach the situation? And a lot of people are saying EAPs. You know, I think that this is something that we've actually talked about in a previous webinar on mental health back in November. Mike, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on EAPs.
You know, that's cute. I can tell you that, but I'm about to hit you with a truth bomb.
Oh, gosh.
Only 7% of people that need help utilize their EAP. And as a mental health clinician, the fact that 93% of people that need help do not reach out and utilize their insurance or their EAP is the stuff that keeps me up at night, right? So here, and I believe I answered this down the line, but we'll just skip over it. You need your EAP to come in regularly and present on the benefits of the EAP. Okay. You need to make a video as a leader or an HR professional in your organization. And I want that video to be short and concise, but I want you to talk about how you know, healthy recipe, mental health of the day, self-care offerings, you know, get involved with a gym membership or a yoga studio. You know, these things don't cost a lot of money, but what you're doing is you're communicating that there are some resources out here for self-care. You know, talk about how, you know, you just connected with an EAP that offers 30 virtual visits for mental health care. You know, these are ways that you can highlight that there's a resource available. Look, when we do onboarding and we get all that paperwork, let's face it, we're not digging in. Maybe somebody does, but they're probably HR professionals, honestly, because I know those people that read through it. My wife's one of them. I'm
Right.
not. My ADD, I've thrown that in the back of the car. I never get around to that. We need to destigmatize mental health, because if I'm an HR professional, I'm getting on that video and I'm saying, hi, I'm Michael Towers. I'm your HR rep. And I just want you to know that, I've experienced mental health issues before, and I've experienced burnout and stress. And I just want you to know that I've utilized this EAP and it is amazing. I've got a virtual visit. I've done a diagnostic tool and an assessment, and I got the help that I need. And I'm the best version of myself that I could possibly be. You send that video out to 1,000 employees, and you'll watch that number go from 7% to 65%, and every one of you will have made the world a better place.
That is such a good tip. I love that. And I'm seeing a lot of other responses coming through. And I love this one, just to call it out. Just sitting down and talking normally, sharing how my life is going, to encourage them to share how things are going in their life. I think there's something to be said about the simplicity of reaching out and touching base in a very personal perspective, and making sure that they know, hey, I'm here just as much as, you want me to be. And I think that goes such a long way. I would love to hear what your thoughts are on those one-to-one conversations.
Me on one-to-one conversations around mental health?
Just having those, yes.
Yeah, if you're okay with it, Meredith, once we get into those 5 takeaways, the mental health first aid piece is exactly that.
Sure. Awesome. Yeah. I would love to hear about, we kind of touched on this, but some of the metrics, some of the hard-hitting numbers surrounding mental health that HR can essentially track and be able to showcase to executives and, just their upper managers. I would love to hear about some of the recommendations that you would showcase in terms of what those numbers might look like.
Yeah, I think, we can look at the issues, right? I think that management is great at looking at, turnover and retention and, leaking, disengagement costs. But let's focus for the purposes of this on employee satisfaction, right? Using surveys of mental health programs or initiatives that an organization provides. And these surveys will consider coping mechanisms and skills that are developed and around the helpfulness of content, overall support received, and the overall experience. Are your employees growing, right? Are they getting healthier?
Sure.
And, my programs are all written in a way for employees to get healthy, to self-actualize, and all of that's going to equal higher profits and more productivity. So I think employee satisfaction, you can use assessment and diagnostic tools and then evaluate, whether or not the organization's getting healthier and adjust. And then I would say to piggyback off of that, benchmarking, because data on its own may not mean anything. But benchmarking does provide the opportunity to compare those metrics with other users getting the same service, so you can simply compare apples to apples. And Deloitte is an organization that you can find all sorts of ROI metrics, KPIs that would help you evaluate the organization against other organizations.
Yeah. And what we do at Workforce really well is provide you guys with those metrics so you can really get a baseline. And again, compare it to those white paper articles from Deloitte. I think that's such a good tip. And making sure that, hey, does my industry match up with the industry standard? And what we do on our side is give you guys those metrics and give you guys those tools. We even do post-shift surveys where you can literally automatically have a survey of however many questions you desire. It can be even as small as like 1 or 2 questions. After each shift, your employee will get this, and it could be a nice little check-in just to be like, what did you think of your shift? Like, is there anything that you want to talk about, whatever it might be that you want to ask them? And you could get that immediate feedback. And at the end of the week, compare all that information and have it in front of you. And again, like Michael said, compare it with those that have in-depth analysis and in-depth data from industries all across, the states. It's so powerful. And I want to make sure on our end that we're giving HR those tools to be able to make those calls and to be able to present that to executives and C-suite. Very powerful. What are some of the common mistakes and assumptions that HR makes when it comes to worker benefits. I'd love to talk a little bit about the aspect of compensation when it comes to mental health.
Yeah, I think that some of the mistakes that they make is probably relying on a more conventional, I would say, old-fashioned approach where how about this? Failing to find a more modern modality where virtual visits, like my wife and I have Kaiser, and we see our clinicians video. At first I pushed back against this as a counselor with COVID. I was seeing a lot of clients online, and I thought that I gain a lot of perspective by reading body language and sitting across from a client, but there's a lot of clients that are, people that won't seek help because getting in a car and transversing mileage to go do something that they're fearful or, unwilling to do is too much of a barrier to treatment.
Sure.
However, logging onto a computer is something they would be willing to do. And I think finding a EAP or insurance benefit package that allows for as many of those types of visits as possible. And I really don't know how much that stuff costs, but I can tell you what doesn't cost money, Meredith. What doesn't cost money is those diagnostic tools where you can have somebody take an assessment and can lead them to say, oh, you know what, I'm burnt out, right? I'm experiencing some stress. And that could make them want, to seek help. So that lead to a want to change, right? To take action. That doesn't cost anything. And then on that same flyer, form, whatever, you can put information about the EAP, the insurance, some resources, right? Also, you can bring in a counselor, right? You could say, okay, in room 304 of the organization, we brought in a counselor, and you could do one-on-one counseling. And then at 3 o'clock, that counselor is going to lead a support group for anybody that wants to talk about, stress or whatever. And then at 5 o'clock, that same counselor is going to do some conflict resolution. And you can also, again, just chip in, build out a gym or offer a membership to a gym. Kaiser Permanente allows us to do Active and Fit Direct. And with that, for $25 a month, Christine and I can join almost every corporate gym that there is. And we travel the country and we can go to almost every gym. These things do not cost a lot of money. And here's the thing, 80% of employees will quit a company for another company that cares more about their mental health. By doing any one of those low-cost things, you've communicated to your entire workforce that you value and care about their mental health.
I love that. It goes a little bit beyond that. Here's a free pizza party. Here's a free coffee for you, which I think there's a time and place for it. Do not get me wrong. Everyone loves a good pizza party, right? But I think a lot of the time it doesn't necessarily hit the mark that's going to last long term for retention and, and loyalty. So I think those are really, really great tips. I would love to turn to this slide. We have a couple of quotes here from a white paper that we actually found on, I believe it's called Big Health. And I love the second quote on the right here. It says, after evaluating the total annual healthcare spend for individuals within the service industry, we found that employees suffering from insomnia or anxiety are costing companies 2.5 times as much as their healthy counterparts on average. So this is a staggering difference of $8,580 per employee. So Michael, my question for you here is, how much money is lost due to toxic culture or workplaces that negatively affect their mental health?
And that's a great question. Because you like to jump around, I'll take that up with you later. I will tell you, I'm there. All right. So what I did was I changed your question slightly. How much money or time is lost due to toxic culture or workplaces that negatively affect mental health? So burned out, stressed out employees that work at toxic workplaces that negatively affect their mental health check out, right? 56% of these employees search for a new job all day long. According to Gallup, employee disengagement costs nearly $350 billion per year. Research shows that disengaged employees have a 37% higher absenteeism rate, resulting in 18% lower productivity and 15% lower profitability. Disengaged employees cost their company 18 to 34% of their annual salary. On an individual level, the average business loses a minimum of $2,246 for every disengaged employee.
Oh, wow.
And lost productivity alone resulting from employee disengagement costs businesses between $3,400 and $10,000. And then I got one more, and then the whopper of all of them.
Yeah.
Disengaged employees also have a direct impact on customer complaints and client disengagement. So think about that. This can have additional costs in the long run. And then a 10,000 employee company with an average salary of $50,000 has a $63 million cost of disengagement.
Oh my God. That is staggering, to say the least. So not only is this impacting your labor costs, it is impacting your ROI directly. So it is a double whammy. It's coming at it from both ends. I mean, that is truly insane. Those statistics are wild. And again, I think it's so underrated, when we hear about these HR-centric issues like mental health, it's really hard to quantify. And I wanted to showcase, and here Michael is telling everybody these amazing statistics that are shocking, right? And it does create such an impact on both your labor costs and ROI. And I think it's really hard for those who might be in operations, those who are just managers, upper management, all the way up to C-suite. It might be hard for them to really acknowledge, hey, mental health is having a really dramatic impact on our numbers. And this is exactly here to prove that. I would love to hear, Michael, what you have seen work when it comes to worker benefits and comp, and what are some benefits that won't necessarily break the bank when it comes to those operational labor cost side of things.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to think, elaborating on bringing a counselor in, bringing a coach in to talk about goals, both professional and personal, right? To let someone know that your future might be beyond the walls of this business, but we want to support you to self-actualize, to grow, is a way to breathe life into an employee. There's a lot of statistics around personal and professional development, and the Great Resignation talked a whole lot about that. So I think, a coach around goal setting, to go along with a counselor that you bring in around, supporting people with self-care, listen, let's just get crazy. I mean, a workplace might say, well, it's not our responsibility, but if you're going to work someone to the bone, right? And again, if we're going to spend 90,000 hours at work,
right,
most of our time is going to be spent in the workplace, and someone's going to leave and commute, however long that commute is. And then they're going to spend time being a father, a husband, so on and so forth, right? How much time is there to learn how to cook a healthy meal? So bring in a chef, right? Utilize the company kitchen or whatever. Show employees that you care. So, and then I think in addition to that, I worked for Arundel Live Casino here in Maryland, and I was an audiovisual technician for them. And one thing they did was put out a newsletter. I don't know if people are going to read a newsletter, but one part of that newsletter was they highlighted a brave and willing employee that was willing to share their mental health journey to reduce stigma every month. And I think when you do that, it communicates to everyone else, hey, I suffer too. There's a group therapy principle that I learned in college, and it's one of the ones, the godfather of group therapy was Irving Yalom, and it's called Installation of Hope. And what happens in group therapy is when everybody gets in there and someone's willing to step up and share that, hey, I have this issue, and they're a little bit advanced in group therapy, and you realize, oh, this person shares in the common problem, but he's surviving and doing well despite it. right? Because of the solution, you're going to have hope too.
Yes.
So doing that, you tell people that there's hope and they can open up and be brave too.
I love that. I love the idea of reducing the stigma around talking about mental health openly. And I think there's some barrier that a lot of people, especially those, in the workplace, of course, feel it's unprofessional to talk about their mental health. And I think that's something that we need to essentially get over as a society in order to resolve these issues at the end of the day. And I love that idea of bringing someone in, or, even going back to that previous poll question on having those one-on-one conversations and saying, hey, I can relate in this sense, or I can relate to A, B, C, whatever they might be feeling. I think that's so powerful. I would love to turn to one of our last slides here. And Michael, I would love for you to talk about those 5 ways to offer that mental health support for hourly staff.
Yeah, can't wait. I just know that when you make the mental health of your employees the priority, you can sit back and watch the magic. Mm-hmm. And these are all a result of research and work that I've done over the last couple of years. Like I said, from SHRM offering me an opportunity and me looking to be valuable for them. And this 2-year journey of, becoming someone that wanted to help people like me with mental illness, to becoming a subject matter expert and professional speaker, speaking to many organizations, has been a fun ride. Mm-hmm. So the first one is self-care, right? So this is for the HR professional. This is for every individual in the organization, including management, leadership. All day, HR leaders put people first. And because of who you all are, you probably go home and put your family and friends first too. Mm-hmm. But you have to take time for yourself. And it starts with putting you first, right? Stephen Covey wrote The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And he said that you can't make golden eggs if you kill the golden goose. So essentially, I just called every one of you a goose. To be a great people manager and a great friend and a great person, it starts with you. And it's an inside job. So some suggestions: make sleep part of your self-care routine. You've got to be intentional. Sleep can have a huge effect on how you feel, both emotionally and physically. And not getting enough sleep can even cause major health issues. Start by thinking about your nightly routine. Stay away from caffeine and sugar before you go to sleep. Put your phone to bed so the screen light and clickbait don't keep you up late. Second, exercise daily as part of your self-care routine. Now, I know ain't nobody got time for that, but exercise boosts your mood, reduces stress and anxiety, and not to mention will help you shed extra weight. And eat right for self-care. Eating healthy keeps our minds alert and working right. Say no to others and say yes to your self-care. Now, this one's a hard one, especially for me as a counselor and HR professionals. But if you're already stressed out and overworked, saying yes to loved ones or coworkers can lead to more burnout, anxiety, and irritability. Learn how to politely say no, and you'll start to feel more self-confident. And schedule your self-care time and guard that time with everything that you have. It's extremely important to plan regular self-care time. Moments alone can help you to ponder the best way to move forward in your life and keep you grounded. Moments with friends can help you feel more connected and relaxed. The more you can work self-care time into your schedule, the better you'll be able to grow, enjoy your life, and thrive. 2, identify, inquire, and intervene. 1 in 5 Americans are affected by mental illness. Knowing the warning signs of common conditions and taking action early leads to the best outcome. Sadly, only half of people experiencing mental health conditions get help. And there are many reasons for this, with stigma being number 1. Mm-hmm. Mental health stigma is a huge barrier. We don't want to be judged for seeking treatment. We don't want to be defined as being weak or incompetent, or even worse, seeing as being able to take care of ourselves. Internalizing these stigmas is the first step to feeling shame and embarrassment. But it takes an entire community to battle the stigmas of mental illness. Awareness starts with educating and informing yourself, as well as educating your family and friends, and then spreading awareness. For those suffering from mental illness, if you speak up, you can create a culture of recovery. But it's critical to seek the help that you need. It may seem like an easy task, and it isn't. It's scary. But if you see it through, it will transform your life. I had to be sentenced to do it, right? To take it serious. And when I did, it changed everything. Wow. Untreated mental health conditions take a heavy toll. It often leaves people feeling lost, alone, and disconnected in the workplace. 16% of people will experience depression. Anxiety impacts 30% of adults during their lifetime. And due to the prevalence of these disorders, chances are your coworkers are struggling with depression and anxiety. So what do we do about it? And that's where identify, inquire, and intervene come in. We need to observe and identify the warning signs and change in our coworkers' behavior or performance. Next, we inquire what's going on and talk to our coworker and assess whether an additional steps need to be taken. And if your coworker confirms there is something serious going on, it's time to intervene. Now, like I said, this is a full day training, and I offer it, and everyone in attendance is certified to deliver mental health first aid. It can be utilized at work, at home, and in your community. I wish we could dig deeper on this topic, and you can reach out to me for further to discuss it further. There are plenty of organizations that offer it, and the training is invaluable. And I truly believe that everyone should be educated in mental health first aid. And then 3, genuine appreciation. Remember that I said 80% of employees will stay at a company that cares about their mental health. Lack of appreciation and feeling valued are the biggest issues contributing to the negative effects on employee mental health. We want to make it more complex, right? It can't be that simple, but it is. The number one factor in job satisfaction is not the amount of pay we receive, but whether we feel appreciated and valued for the work that we do. According to research conducted by the U.S. Department of Labor, 64% of Americans who leave their jobs say they do so because they don't feel appreciated. Something deep within the human psyche cries out for appreciation. When that need is unmet, then an employee's level of engagement with their work will be low. Stephen Covey, my man, who wrote 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, stated, next to physical survival, the greatest need of a human being is psychological survival. To be understood, to be affirmed, to be validated, and to be appreciated. When team members learn how to begin to communicate authentic appreciation to one another, the quality of relationships improves between workers and their supervisors, and also among coworkers. The benefits of authentic appreciation: attendance improves and productivity increases. Team members are less irritable and internal conflict declines. Rate of employee turnover decreases. Customer satisfaction ratings rise. Supervisors and managers enjoy their work more. And the kicker: when authentic appreciation is communicated, all stakeholders win. The employee, the supervisor, the organization, customers and clients, as well as the family and friends of the employee who get to enjoy a more positive, encouraged individual. Authentic appreciation communicated from both leaders and coworkers leads to a positive, supportive work environment that others will envy. The result: positive communication and improved morale to a level we've never imagined. But this is something that needs further understanding. However, what makes one person feel appreciated doesn't necessarily make another person feel appreciated. Mm-hmm. This brings us to the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace by Gary Chapman and Paul White. Meredith will be sending you a link to this book. It is inspired by the book, The 5 Love Language. I can tell you that the 5 love languages are everything. I've just made, after 4 years of being married to my wife, a concerted effort to target my love to her love languages of quality physical touch and quality time, right? Because otherwise I could love her with acts of service, with tangible gifts, but I might as well be speaking Russian. It's the same thing with the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. They're words of affirmation, which is obviously words to communicate a positive message. Quality time, which showing a person they are valued by giving them your most precious resource, time. Acts of service, and true leadership, right? Whatever your position in the organization, requires a willingness to serve others. Tangible gifts is giving the right gift, not a plaque. And for some people, you give them a plaque in front of 100 people, makes them want to go throw up. So the wrong gift can actually be offensive to certain recipients. And lastly, physical touch. Now that's controversial in the workplace. So I'll let you all decide what's right for your organization. But please, please, please get the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. Fortunately, I'm a certified facilitator of appreciation at work. And by teaching you effective communication around appreciation, employees, coworkers, and team members will improve. It'll improve job satisfaction and create more positive relationships between managers and employees. And all of that decreases burnout rates. I sound like an infomercial, but reach out and discuss. 2 more. Q. I put this down. Congruence, unconditional positive regard, and empathy. I love this. It was another one of my signature programs, and I called it person-centered leadership. And I learned it in college. It's modeled after person-centered therapy, or Rogerian therapy, which was developed by Carl Rogers in the 1940s. This type of therapy diverged from the traditional model of the therapist as an expert and moved instead towards a non-directive, empathetic approach that empowers and motivates the client in the therapeutic process. You guys have heard of Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung and psychoanalytic theory, right? You might not have heard of Carl Rogers. The therapy is based on Rogers' belief that every human being strives for and has the capacity to fulfill his or her own potential. Rather than viewing people as inherently flawed with problematic behaviors and thoughts that require treatment, person-centered therapy identifies that each person has the capacity and desire for personal growth and change. Imagine if every leader saw all of their human capital like this. Carl Rogers was one of the first therapists to stop calling people patients because he didn't see them as sick. He called them clients and believed they had unlimited potential. The primary mechanism of therapy was not the therapeutic model, but the relationship between the therapist and the client. Listen, there's a profound difference between a boss and a leader. A boss manages the process and is zoned in on the details. Having a micromanager, and you know this, in charge can increase stress and compromise the performance of people who are counting on their leaders to lead, especially through challenging times. Bosses focus on problems. True leadership is enacted person by person rather than problem by problem. I love that. A person-centered leader is committed to building strong relationship with the person they lead, and authenticity within the workplace is encouraged. So to get to the bottom of the Q, I'll gloss over the rest. It's in Meredith's going to send you a breakdown of what that looks like, but congruence is being consistent. The leader is transparent, authentic, and able to relate without hiding behind a professional or personal facade. They're not fake. Right? Unconditional positive regard. The leader is accepting and demonstrates a willingness to attentively listen without interruption, judgment, or giving advice. They treat you like a human being, right? And empathy. The leader communicates their desire to understand and appreciate the client's perspective. Whether or not I, as a leader, and I've led a lot, agree or not, how dare I not sit there and try to understand what the person across from me is saying. And there is a desire to understand. A Q leader gets the most of their employees, and they are willing to go the distance to ensure the leader's vision becomes a reality. And so I have strategies around that. And then lastly, and this is my favorite, because this is the type of speaker that I am, vulnerability. Be vulnerable. Talk to a therapist about your stress. I'm talking to everyone on this webinar to be vulnerable. It's so important to transfer that heavy burden that's been put on you by the people that you serve at work, at home, in your community. Find a mentor, confide in a friend. There's healing in being vulnerable, admitting that you're hurting. I love Brene Brown, by the way. She said that vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, joy, courage, empathy, and creativity. So while going to the new yoga class may feel uncomfortable, you're also opening yourself up to the opportunity to make new friends and learn a new healthy habit. But if you run away the second those shaky feelings arise, you're just reinforcing the voice in your head that says, I'm not good enough. Do not run away from the self-care that you desperately need working in the HR field. You are worth it. It's your time, and that starts right now. Thank you.
Wow. That was amazing, Michael. Thank you so much for that. I have sent the link to the 5 languages of appreciation in the workplace. I cannot recommend that everybody checks this book out. I mean, it is the same author, Gary Chapman, who did write the 5 love languages. And it is so impactful and so important that as a professional, you know what to look for. I will also be sending out, or someone from my team will be sending out a zip file of over 25 pieces of resources that Michael has been so gracious to share with us from his own personal collateral on mental health first aid. So I am so excited to be sharing that with everybody. Michael, that was seriously amazing. I would love to open up the floor to any questions from the audience. Feel free to drop them in the chat box. In the meantime, we do have a couple of emailed in questions that, Michael, I would love to ask you. Gina emailed in. Gina K asked, how can I communicate mental health resources to my staff without feeling like I'm crossing a professional boundary?
So here's a statement that we use a lot in the soul work that I do with my accountability peeps. And that is, that's about you. That's not about them. So, I'm more than glad to talk to you personally about that. I'm not insulting you or calling you out. What I'm saying is that's a feeling that you feel based on something inside of you. And maybe, maybe it's stigma that's something that, you feel a certain way about mental health. So it's a boundary, right? And you'd be crossing. And I understand, again, that paradigm we're talking about around approaching mental health exists. But what I would say is that do not deny an opportunity to help someone by providing them with a valuable resource because you have feelings about it or how it's going to make you feel. Do it. Just do it. There are so many resources out there now from SHRM, right? SHRM Foundation. Go to SHRM. Underneath, you'll find the SHRM Foundation link, or just Google SHRM Foundation. They have an entire page dedicated to mental health in the workplace.
Wow.
Send any one of their resources. It's professional, it's corporate. Wendy Safstrom is amazing, the executive director of the SHRM Foundation. And I feel like that's enough legitimacy that you can make it professional. And
that's great advice. Yeah, SHRM has been an amazing resource for myself as well as coworkers and those who are in the hourly workforce that have come to us and said, hey, what do you recommend here? I always point them to SHRM. First and foremost, they are amazing. They really are. We also have a question from a Whitney S. She asked, I feel like my business does not prioritize mental health and therefore does not allocate any finances towards it. What can I do to change management's perspective?
Ooh, it's a great question. My first thought is send me the address. Every ounce of muscle in this body,
right?
Foley's name on it, and I would look at that leadership group as a bunch of clueless bullies. But anyway, since now I'm a corporate speaker representing SHRM, what I would say is again, Deloitte. These are organizations. If you have any graphic design skills, certainly I have very limited, but I'll help you figure something out. Let's do an infographic, around some of these statistics. let's send an infographic of some of these statistics. Maybe if 3 employees are willing to give their personal sentence or 2 around some burnout they've experienced lately and make it anonymous. And then, and you're talking about maybe a 1-page, and then underneath that, a couple suggestions around some initiatives you'd like to launch to address these 3 anonymous statements and some of the statistics you've seen industry-wide. Mm-hmm. What do they think? I challenge anybody that you send that to not act, because if you do it a second and a third time, the next thing is to report them to the DLLR or something else.
Right.
Again, like I said, I didn't really get into it. I talked to Meredith about it. I'm going to have the employer sign a commitment, report them to me, and I'll blast them on LinkedIn.
Yeah. I think an infographic would be great. Doesn't necessarily mean you need to make your own per se, but I think having a screenshot from a Deloitte white paper, anything like that, would be perfect. And you can compare it with the metrics that you have gathered from your own staff, whether that's surveying them, whether that's tracking, what time they're clocking out, whatever it might be, whatever hard numbers that you're getting. Compare that to the Deloitte infographic and share that with your staff. It does not need to be anything super formal. It can be, hey, just wanted to put this out there and share, even this webinar as a recording would be great to show them some of the statistics that we've shared today. I think could be super, super impactful.
It would take me 6 hours to make an infographic. So
exactly. Nobody needs to be messing with that. Nobody's got time for that.
Exactly.